I took care of my disabled brother for 15 years. Then he secretly sold our parents' house and left me homeless. For 15 years, I dedicated my life to taking care of my disabled brother. Our parents passed away young, and I stepped up. I cooked, cleaned, worked 2 jobs, and put my own dreams on hold to make sure he was okay. Then, one day, I came home to find an eviction notice on the door. Confused, I called my brother. His response, "Oh, I sold the house. I need the money, and you'll figure something out." He took everything. He left me homeless, betrayed, discarded. He thought I'd just accept it and move on. But if he thought he could stab me in the back and walk away untouched, he was about to learn a very painful lesson. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. For 15 years, my life revolved around taking care of my brother, Jake. Our parents passed away when we were young, and since Jake was born with a physical disability, I became his caretaker, his advocate, and his only real support. I gave up my social life, my dreams, and even relationships to make sure he had everything he needed. I worked 2 jobs to keep up with expenses. I handled all the bills for the house our parents left us. I cooked, cleaned, and managed everything while making sure Jake never felt like a burden. And for years, I never questioned it, because he was my brother, and family takes care of each other, right? That's what I thought. Until one day, I came home and found an eviction notice taped to the front door. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake, but when I called Jake, his response shattered my entire world. "Oh yeah," he said casually. "I sold the house. I needed the money." I blinked. "You... what?" "I sold it," he repeated, like he had just gotten rid of an old couch instead of the home we grew up in. My chest tightened. "Jake, that was our parents' house. My name is on the bills. How could you sell it without even telling me?" His voice was cold, emotionless. "Because it's my house. Mom and Dad left it to me. You'll figure something out." That's when it hit me. He had been planning this for months. While I was breaking my back working, while I was taking care of him, making sure he never had to worry about anything, he was secretly selling our home behind my back. And now, I had nothing. I was homeless. But if he thought I was just going to walk away quietly, he had no idea what was coming next. I stood there, staring at the eviction notice in disbelief. The home I had spent my entire life taking care of was gone just like that. And Jake, he had acted like it was no big deal, like I was just an inconvenience he had finally gotten rid of. For years, I had sacrificed everything for him. I had worked myself to exhaustion, put my own dreams on hold, and done everything in my power to make sure he was comfortable. And in return, he had taken the only thing I had left, the home that had been our parents' legacy. I clenched my fists, my heart pounding. I had never felt rage like this before. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the entitlement. The way he had acted like I was nothing, like my years of sacrifice didn't even count. He hadn't even had the decency to tell me himself. I had to find out from a piece of paper taped to the door. I called him again, my hands shaking. This time, when he picked up, I didn't bother sugarcoating my words. "You stole from me, Jake." He sighed, sounding annoyed. "God, don't be so dramatic. You don't own anything. Mom and Dad left the house to me. You just lived there because I let you." I almost laughed. "Let me? Are you joking? I paid the bills. I worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. You didn't lift a damn finger," he scoffed. "Yeah, and that was your choice. Nobody forced you to be a martyr." I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. That's how he saw me? A martyr? Like all those years of sacrificing for him meant nothing? I had given him everything, and he had been sitting there plotting to throw me out. I forced myself to take a breath, my voice steady but cold. "So what now, Jake?" "Where do you expect me to go?" He sighed again, as if I was inconveniencing him with my very existence. "I don't know. That's not my problem. I gave you 2 months to find a place before the paperwork went through. If you didn't plan ahead, that's on you." My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. He had been planning this for 2 months, sitting there, watching me struggle, while knowing damn well that he was about to take everything from me. He had already spent most of the money from the sale. I found out later that he had blown through it in just a few weeks. New furniture, expensive electronics, even a weekend vacation. He hadn't even used it to improve his situation. He had just burned it all, like it was nothing. But he had made one huge mistake. He had underestimated me. Because if he thought I was just going to disappear quietly, if he thought I was going to let him get away with it, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. I stood outside that house for a long time, staring at the home I had spent my entire life taking care of, now ripped away from me without a second thought. Jake had made it clear. He didn't care about what I had done for him. He had never cared. To him, I was just some convenience that had finally worn out its usefulness. And now that he had his money, I was disposable. But if he thought I was just going to accept this, he had no idea who he was dealing with. I spent the next few days digging. I pulled up every legal document, every financial record, every single contract tied to that house. And that's when I found the first crack in his plan. He had no idea how to handle the legal side of things. See, while the house had technically been in his name, all of the bills, property taxes, and maintenance records were in mine. I had been the one making payments. I had been the one keeping it from falling apart. And he had just thrown all of that away without a second thought. The sale had gone through, but guess what? Jake hadn't paid off everything. He had just taken the cash, spent most of it, and assumed he'd be fine. But the house still had outstanding tax debts, ones he didn't even know about. And now that the house was gone, guess who the collectors were coming after? Not me, him. I made a few calls. I filed a claim with the tax office, making it clear that I had been the one maintaining the property. That meant when they went looking for money, they'd be knocking on Jake's door first. A few days later, Jake called me. I almost didn't answer, but I wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear him squirm. His voice was tight with panic. "You need to fix this?" I smirked. "Fix what?" "There are tax bills under your name tied to the house. The new owners are pissed and the county's saying I have to pay them." I leaned back, savoring the moment. "Sounds like a you problem." "You live there," he snapped. I laughed. "Yeah, and I paid for everything. Remember? You were just sitting there doing nothing while I worked 2 jobs. But now that the house is gone, you're the one left holding the debt." "You can't do this," he hissed, but his voice cracked. He was scared. "I'm not doing anything," I said smoothly. "I'm just making sure things go to the right person. You know, the legal owner." He cursed under his breath. "I don't have the money for this." "Oh? Didn't you blow through the cash already? Bought yourself some fancy stuff? Went on that little vacation?" Silence. I let that sink in. "Actions have consequences, Jake. You wanted to treat me like a doormat? Well, now you get to learn what it's like to stand on your own." Then I hung up. Jake had taken everything from me, but now I was taking everything from him. After hanging up on Jake, I sat back and waited. I didn't need to do anything else. He had already sealed his own fate. A week later, I got a call from a mutual friend who had been keeping tabs on him. "Dude, Jake's freaking out. He thought he could just sell the house and walk away, but now the tax office is coming after him. And guess what? He's got nothing left to pay them with." I smirked, exactly as I planned. See, while Jake had been busy spending every cent of the money from the sale, he hadn't stopped to consider what would happen when the debts caught up to him. And now, he was in deep trouble. It turned out that when I filed my claim with the tax office, it triggered a full review of the house's financial history. They found the years of payments I had been making, utilities, maintenance, even past due taxes that I had covered to keep the house from going into foreclosure. And since Jake had profited off the sale without settling those debts, the county was demanding he pay up immediately. Of course, he didn't have the money. He had spent it all. And the best part? The new owners of the house were pissed because when they bought the property, they assumed it was clean. Now they were dealing with a legal mess that Jake had left behind. The cherry on top? They were suing him for misrepresentation. So now, not only did he owe thousands in back taxes, but he was also facing a lawsuit from the very people he sold the house to. I waited for the inevitable. And sure enough, Jake called me again. I picked up just to hear him suffer. "What do you want, Jake?" His voice was shaking. "Look, I messed up, okay? I didn't think it would turn out like this, but I need help. Please." I chuckled. "Oh, you need help? You mean like how I needed help when you sold the house out from under me? You mean like when I needed a place to live after you threw me out? That kind of help?" He stammered. I wasn't thinking. I thought I could handle it, but now you can't, I interrupted coldly. And let me guess, now that you're drowning, you suddenly remember that I exist? He was quiet. I sighed dramatically. That's funny, because when I called you after finding out you sold our parents' house, you told me I'd figure something out. He swallowed hard. I didn't mean... That's the thing, Jake. I did figure something out. I figured out that you're a selfish, entitled thief who doesn't deserve my help, and I figured out that you can deal with this mess on your own. Just like you told me to. Silence. Then, in a whisper, he said, I don't know what to do. I smirked. Not my problem. Then I hung up. Jake had spent years letting me carry him, letting me do all the work while he sat back and took everything for granted. Now, he was the one drowning, and I was finally free. After hanging up on Jake, I expected him to keep trying. More calls, more texts, more pathetic attempts to drag me back into his mess. But, surprisingly, he went silent. At first, I thought maybe he had finally realized that I was done with him, that I wasn't going to swoop in and save him like I had done so many times before. But then, a few days later, I got a call from our aunt. He's in trouble, she said, skipping the pleasantries. I let out a short laugh. Oh, you don't say? I know you're mad at him, but this is serious. He's about to lose everything. The new homeowners are suing him for misrepresentation, and the tax office is threatening legal action if he doesn't pay up. He's desperate. I shook my head. And why exactly is that my problem? She sighed. Because he's family. That made me laugh even harder. Family? Where was that loyalty when he threw me out on the street? Where was that family nonsense when he sold our parents' house behind my back? She went quiet. Because she knew. Finally, she said, I'm not saying you have to help him, but I think he finally understands what he did. I rolled my eyes. Too little, too late. Let him figure it out, just like he told me to, I said, my voice flat. He made his bed. Now he gets to rot in it. And then I hung up. A few weeks passed, and I heard more updates about Jake. Not because I wanted to, but because his downfall had turned into family gossip. He had lost everything. The lawsuit from the new homeowners? He couldn't fight it. He had already spent the money from the sale, and without assets, he had nothing left to settle with. The tax office? They weren't backing down. Legal action was already in motion. And the best part? His friends, the ones he had wasted all that money on, had disappeared. They had enjoyed the spending spree, but now that Jake was broke and drowning in legal trouble, not a single one of them stuck around. He was truly alone. I didn't feel bad, because for the first time, he was feeling what I had felt when he threw me away like garbage. One night, after months of silence, my phone rang. It was Jake. I almost didn't answer, but I wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear him beg. I picked up, saying nothing at first. After a long pause, his voice came through, quiet, broken. I lost everything. I leaned back, my expression blank. And I have nowhere to go, no money, no one to turn to. I don't know what to do. I let that sit in the air for a moment. Then I smirked. Not my problem. And just like that, I hung up on him for the last time. Jake had spent years taking everything from me. Now, he had nothing. And me? I had never been better. After hanging up on Jake, I expected him to try again. Maybe more desperate calls, maybe some pathetic excuse, maybe even a guilt trip. But instead, silence. He had finally realized what I already knew. There was no coming back from this. I spent years being the only person in his corner. I was the one who kept him afloat, made sure he had everything he needed, carried the burden of keeping our family's house in order. And what did he do? He betrayed me the second it benefited him. He took everything, leaving me with nothing but the clothes on my back, thinking I would just figure it out like I always did. Well, now he was the one drowning, and I wasn't there to save him. A week later, I got a call from our uncle. I ignored it. Then our aunt ignored that too. Finally, I got a text. Jake is trying to get in touch with you. He says he needs help. At least talk to him. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Where was this energy when I needed help? That shut it down. No more messages. No more pressure to be the bigger person. But karma? She wasn't done with him yet. A few days later, a mutual friend texted me out of nowhere. Dude, Jake is getting evicted. He couldn't pay rent and now they're kicking him out. He's got nowhere to go. I didn't even flinch. Not my problem. He could have had a home. He could have had stability. He had it all, and he threw it away. Now, he was living the consequences of his own greed. Another week passed, and I got one final message from Jake. A last, pathetic attempt. I know I don't deserve your help, but I have nowhere else to turn. Please, I'll do anything. I just need a place to stay. I didn't even think twice. I deleted the message without responding. The same way he discarded me, I discarded him. Because some betrayals, you don't come back from. I wasn't bitter, I wasn't angry, I was just done. And for the first time in years, I finally felt free. After deleting Jake's message, I felt nothing. No guilt, no hesitation, no second thoughts. He had made his choice when he sold our parents' house and left me with nothing. Now, he had to live with it. For the first time in years, my life was finally my own. No more working 2 jobs just to support someone who never appreciated it. No more feeling like I had to carry the weight of someone else's bad decisions. No more looking out for a brother who only ever looked out for himself. I had spent so much of my life being the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who sacrificed everything for family. But what did family do for me? They tossed me aside when it suited them. A few weeks later, I heard through mutual friends that Jake was completely broke. Without the house, without the money, without me to support him, he had nothing left. He had burned every bridge, pissed away every opportunity, and now, no one wanted to help him. He tried reaching out to distant relatives, but the second they found out what he had done to me, they turned him away. He tried couch surfing, but nobody wanted to take in someone who had proven himself to be selfish and ungrateful. Even the people he had spent all that money impressing, they were long gone. One day, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but when I listened to the message, I recognized the voice immediately. It was Jake. His tone was different now. No arrogance, no excuses, just desperation. I know you hate me. I don't blame you. I don't know what to do. I've lost everything. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I sat there, staring at my phone, waiting for something. Some urge to call him back. Some flicker of emotion. Some sense of obligation. But there was nothing. I had spent so much of my life giving and giving and giving, only to be tossed aside when it no longer suited him. Now, I had nothing left to give. I deleted the voicemail. No response, no closure, no second chances. Jake had spent years taking me for granted. Now, he was getting a front row seat to what life was like without me in it. After deleting Jake's voicemail, I felt nothing but closure. No lingering guilt, no temptation to call him back, no urge to give him the comfort he had denied me when I was the one in need. He was nothing to me now. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. No more sacrificing my own happiness for someone who wouldn't do the same for me. No more feeling like I had to clean up his messes. No more carrying the weight of someone else's bad decisions. I had spent years thinking that family meant obligation, that no matter what, I had to be there for him. But Jake had proven that family, it isn't about blood, it's about respect. And he had none for me. I found out later through a friend that Jake had officially hit rock bottom. He was sleeping in his car, bouncing from cheap motels when he could scrape together enough money. His friends, gone, his reputation, destroyed. The life he thought he was building when he sold the house, non-existent. One night, as I sat in my new apartment, one I had gotten for myself, with my own money, for my own happiness, I thought about how much had changed. I wasn't trapped under his shadow anymore. I wasn't working myself into exhaustion just to keep someone else afloat. I had built something for myself, something he could never take away. And the best part? I didn't miss him. Not his presence, not our so-called brotherhood, not the weight of his expectations on my shoulders. Nothing. Jake had finally learned what it was like to be discarded, and for once, I was the one walking away. Time passed, and Jake became nothing more than a memory. The desperate messages stopped, the attempts to guilt-trip me faded away, and for the first time, I truly moved on. I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for another betrayal. I wasn't bracing myself for the next time he'd take advantage of me. He was gone from my life, and I was better for it. Through mutual connections, I heard bits and pieces of what had become of him. It wasn't pretty. Without a home, without money, without anyone willing to help him, he had been bouncing from place to place, barely scraping by. Some nights, he was sleeping in his car. Other nights, he was relying on strangers just to get by. It was poetic, really. He had thrown me out of my home, and now he had none. I wasn't surprised when, one evening, I got an email from an unknown address. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. It was from Jake. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. I was selfish. I was cruel. I took everything from you, and now I have nothing. I understand now what I did to you. If I could take it all back, I would. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but if there's even the smallest chance we can fix things, I would do whatever it takes. I read it twice, and then I deleted it. No response, no closure, no second chances. Because Jake had taught me one thing. Some betrayals you don't come back from. After deleting Jake's email, I felt something I never expected. Absolute peace. No hesitation, no regret, no urge to respond. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I was finally free. For so long, I had carried the weight of his selfishness, his betrayal, his entitlement. I had given everything to someone who never once thought about me, never once considered the consequences of his actions. And now, he was alone, just like he had left me. But the difference? I had rebuilt my life. Instead of wasting time wondering if I should forgive him, I focused on my own happiness. I had my own place, my own success, my own friends who actually cared about me. I had surrounded myself with people who valued me, who saw me as more than just someone to use and discard. And Jake? He was nothing to me now. One day, I heard from a distant relative that he had left town, trying to start over somewhere new. I didn't ask for details. I didn't care. That part of my life was over. Because in the end, the best revenge wasn't getting back at him. It wasn't making him suffer. It was moving on so completely that he didn't even matter anymore. And I had never been happier. Some betrayals you don't come back from. Jake thought he could steal everything from me and still keep me in his life. But he was wrong. Now, let me ask you, have you ever had a family member betray you in a way that changed everything? How did you handle it? Drop your stories in the comments. I'd love to hear them. And if you made it this far, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.